Okay, yeah, welcome back to this video. In this video, I would like to explain how you can set up authentication and authorization for the Elasticsearch stack. Because at the moment, everything you can communicate with Elasticsearch without any user authentication. Anybody can connect now to Elasticsearch. First of all, let me bring back, it's not necessary or not required, but I think it makes sense now to say we would like to bring back the remaining Elasticsearch node, which is the third one, just to have it complete again. So this is 3. And let's have a look. Docker logs 3. Okay. I think it's coming up now. You already saw maybe in the previous video that there is at least a message feed to authenticate the user beat system. So all of the components are trying to send data into Elasticsearch. And for file beat, there is a user pre-configured, which is beat system. And that has actually no user or no password authenticator, and that's why it's failing. So, and now, first of all, we need to configure default users in Elasticsearch. And for that, I'm going again into the documentation. Let me scroll to the top. And there's a production setup. And inside that production setup, you can see that activate user authentication. And the first thing we are going to do is to execute that command within the Docker container. And as you can see, it's supposed to be executed in the first Elasticsearch cluster. You can also do it in others, but then you need to modify that command. So let's say Docker. Okay, now I was confused. This one here is not running. Okay, Docker compose f Elasticsearch #1 and YAML and up and D. That's why I was wondering why it's not coming up, but I have stopped this one here. Okay, so that's why I think it makes sense to continue on that node here, maybe, and say that we are executing the command on a second Elasticsearch. Oh, on a second container. Okay. That's, yep, okay, that's because the port is different. So, and what it gives you, it generates for that pre-configured users, which are available out of the box default passwords. And these or those default passwords needs to be configured. And let me, in the environment file, and let me start with FileBeat here, because FileBeat has an issue telling or registering data. And I'm on the first API gateway, and I'm opening that .env file. And here is somewhere the Beats user, Beats system. And this Beats system user now should use that password. You can now obviously skip to configure other users over here. I just do it once complete, and then I take it over into all other environment files. So each user is configured, hard to read, or is documented for what it is used for. And so let's say we have a Kibana user, Kibana system, and we have Logstash, and we have Elastic user. For the Logstash username and for the API Builder username, you see that there are 2 different usernames for Logstash. This is the username which is used to send monitoring information, like metrics beats about the health status and so on about Logstash. While this one here, and this should stay to Logstash system, while this one here is the user that is really sending the traffic information into the indices. And this is some kind of a super user, and of course the recommendation is not to use that super user for that. Instead, configure a dedicated Logstash API-M user or whatever to send the data. So, but for the demo, we stay with the super user. And Then there are two other parameters which are called the Elasticsearch anonymous user should be no longer enabled. This is the user which is, or this allows actually to use Elasticsearch without any authentication. And also we have to say that Kibana should now have security enabled. And that means that you have then to authenticate to Kibana. And only with that, you can then access dashboards and so on. Obviously, that settings over here, or besides the Beats system user, all of these settings are not relevant to the gateway. At the gateway, only the Beats system is relevant. At the Logstash, only the Logstash users are relevant, and so on, and also the API builder. So that means, but anyway, I think it's a good idea to have that synchronized. So that's why I take a copy over here. Then I say docker stop filebeat, and then I say docker compose filebeat, docker compose filebeat up D. And now we can go into the stack monitoring. And because at the moment I don't see file beats, and very nice that when you now have this finally configured, or first of all, yeah, when this is finally configured, I also see a file beat section, individual file beats. So that means we will come to that section. Now you see, okay, there's a file beat sending data to Elasticsearch. And if you have configured the gateway name correctly, then you see this is the file beat running on the gateway 1, and that file beat is sending you that amount of data and that amount of requests and so on. And with that, you can very easily validate if each file beat running on each gateway is sending data as expected. And if not, you have to check. So, and let's repeat that also for the other nodes. Just let me quickly do that. Axway and .env, then just look for beats and remove all this and replace it with what we have just copied, docker stop filebeat, and then docker compose .f filebeat docker compose up-d. So, and now the next one. And also here, it's up to you if you would like to configure that manually, or if you would like to transfer the environment files. So, okay, and docker stop file beat, docker compose file beat docker t. Axway.env and beats. Okay, let me have a quick look. Now you see more and more file beats are coming up. This is now the number 4. It should come up as well. Yep, it's working. And now let's do it also here. vi.env and beats. This is the first time I can really see what I'm doing. Okay. Docker stop filebeat. Docker compose. By the way, there is a mount used in filebeat to make sure if it is restarted, even if you're removing filebeat completely, that it restarts at the beginning where it left off. So that means the data is not resent a second time, even if the open traffic event log audit files and so on are still old. So that means it remembers what it has sent already. So docker compose D. So that means it's even no risk to remove the file beat completely, as the volume is taking care about that. Axway and beats. It's a little bit boring. and stop file beat. Docker compose file beat docker up and d. Okay, and now the more interesting thing is obviously, yeah, not so much Logstash for any reason. I think Logstash can already send data, but I will do it anyway. .env. Also here is check for beats and remove all this. So yeah, yeah, it can send because user authentication was not enabled with the anonymous user. That's why Logstash was able until now, until we have activated it in Elasticsearch to send data. So now it should no longer be able to send data until we configure it here. So that means docker is ps, docker stop. Also restart at this point the API builder process, because also the API builder process now needs to authenticate. And as you have seen, there was an environment variable which was called the API builder user, and now that API builder process is, or that process that is taking that user to communicate with Elasticsearch. So here we can say just docker compose up. And now the last thing we do is Kibana beats. So, and here at Kibana, next time I should use other colors. I don't know. So at this point, the first time this parameter becomes relevant, because now this is used by the Kibana Docker container to enable user authentication. And also it becomes relevant for the Elasticsearch cluster, because now for that Elasticsearch node, that anonymous access is disabled. It was still enabled even if you have generated that usernames and user passwords. So that means I have to docker stop the Elasticsearch node, and I have to stop Kibana. And then I can say docker compose Elasticsearch, docker compose #1. YAML. Don't use that init file, that docker compose init file a second time. Use it only during bootstrap, and whenever you restart that Elasticsearch node, just use that file. So, and the other thing we would like to restart is Kibana, docker compose up. No, not up. F Kibana docker compose like so. Okay. So, and now let's say docker logs Kibana.f, and also do that over here. vi.env beats. Wow, that color is beautiful. Docker shop Elasticsearch 2. Even with 2 Elasticsearch nodes down, your Elasticsearch server or the data is still accessible by the clients. This is because you have still a primary or a replica shard available. So that means this is an important information to know. So then docker compose Elasticsearch, second one up. So, and the last one, beats. Oh my God. Okay, very likely you don't see anything, but it's still the same. Uppsala. Copy. And now we say docker start Elasticsearch number 3. Maybe I should have activated authentication and authorization as I have set up the initial first node to avoid that you have to reconfigure and restart Elasticsearch so often. But for any reason, I haven't done it that way. So YAML pubd. So now let's have a look. First of all, Kibana is now telling me it's unauthorized. So that means this is because Kibana security and is now enabled. And it's not only that Kibana is now, let's say, asking for a user, that user is obviously used to talk to Elasticsearch. So, and Kibana is something like the view to Elastic, and that's why this is some kind of a proxy to the authentication, which happens then in Elastic. So that means when you are now setting up in Kibana users, you set up that users in Elasticsearch. So, okay. And now you have the possibility in stack management. And here you have users and roles, and here you can control which user sees what. This goes, to my opinion, on the index level, on the dashboard level, and things like that. Also on spaces you can configure. So, but with that, we have enabled authentication. We have activated authentication on all components. So all components are now using that configured users. And let's have a look in the Discover dashboard if the data is really flying in or not by saying, give me the data from the last 15 minutes, refresh. So that means, and if the data is still coming in, and that looks like maybe that needs to recap or recatch a little bit, but the data is still coming in. And also that error message, you saw that beat system were unable to authenticate should in the Elasticsearch logs should be gone, should be okay now. And you see that all beats instance are sending data, and you can then have a look into beats if it is sending the data perfect, if you have any errors dropped or something like that. Again, a pretty long video, but maybe that was because I have configured authentication and authorization a little bit too late in the process. But I hope it was useful. I think, let me check, I think that concludes that video series and how to set up and configure that Axway-API-Management Elasticsearch solution. And if you have any questions, feel free to create an issue on the GitHub project, and we are trying to improve that solution. We are making it better. We are adding new features. Just let us know, and we are happy to help. Okay, then thanks for watching, and goodbye.